Imagine, you are 9 days old, but in the eyes of the law, you are a ghost. You have no name, no records, and no place in the family. In a world where 35% of infants didn't survive their first year, Romans preferred to wait. Your entire fate was decided in a single second. Would your father lift you from the ground? If he did, you became a person. If not, you remained nothing more than a nameless statistic. This was only Rome. In Sparta, a council of strangers decided your fate hours after birth. In Athens, on the same peninsula, in the same century, parents raised children with toys, nurses, and a school down the street. The rod that beat Roman schoolboys survived almost unchanged into American classrooms until 1867, and into some until 1971. Four systems over 2,000 years. Protected childhood, the kind we take for granted, is a recent invention. Plutarch called a newborn's first week more like a plant than an animal, describing the wait for the umbilical cord to fall off, usually by day 7. Before that, the physician Cyrannus, writing in the 2nd century CE, laid out exactly how to handle the baby's body. Wrap it limb by limb in soft wool bands, arms pinned to the sides so it can't scratch its own face. Unwrap it daily for a warm bath and a massage meant to shape the limb straight. A wet nurse had to meet a checklist: age 20 to 40, already given birth 2 or 3 times, calm temperament, because Romans believed a bad temper passed through the milk. On day 9 for boys and day 8 for girls, families held the dies lustricus, the day of purification. The child received a name, entered the family records, and got a bulla, a gold amulet worn against evil. Girls got a lunula, a crescent pendant, instead. Guests brought rattles called crepundia, tiny metal axes, crescents, and animals strung on a cord. They jingled to scare off spirits and doubled as the child's first toy. If a baby died before day 9, it often had no legal name. Some infant tombstones from this period sit blank where a name should be. Rome buried these children. It rarely named them. Rome made you wait 9 days for recognition. Sparta turned that wait into a test. Plutarch, writing 7 centuries after the lawgiver Lycurgus supposedly built Sparta's laws in the 9th century BCE, described a father carrying his newborn to the lesche, a hall where tribal elders, the geronts, judged the child's body for strength and shape. Weak or deformed infants, the story goes, were carried to a ravine on Mount Taygetus called the Apathetai and left there. Archaeologists excavated the Apathetai in 1982 and 1983. They found skeletons, all adult men, aged 18 to 35, executed criminals. Not one infant bone. The story of babies thrown from a cliff was likely an exaggeration Plutarch recorded centuries after the fact. What actually happened next is better documented. At age 7, Spartan boys left their families for good. The state placed them in barracks under an older teenager, an eirene. Rations stayed deliberately short, and boys were expected to steal food to survive. Getting caught earned a beating, not for stealing, but for getting caught. By 12, they lost all clothing except 1 cloak a year and slept on reeds they cut themselves from the Eurotas River. At 18 came the Crypteia. Armed with a knife and nothing else, young Spartans were sent into the countryside to hunt the state's own slave population, the helots, and kill on sight. The army stayed their home for 2 decades. 100 miles away, in the same century, what was childhood in Athens? Athenian boys stayed home until 6 or 7. A nurse and a paidagogos, a trusted household slave, raised them, then walked them to school and back each day, carrying their bags and watching their manners. Athenian children had toys for every age. Rattles shaped like pigs for infants, wooden pull carts for toddlers, dolls with jointed limbs, and knucklebones, sheep ankle dice kids carried in small pouches. Archaeologists find these buried with children by the dozen. At 3, a boy tasted wine for the first time at the festival of Dionysus. At 7, he started school, learning letters from a grammatistes and music from a kitharistes. Military service began at 18, not 7, when a young man became an ephebe. 2 cities on one peninsula built opposite systems. Sparta raised a soldier from birth. Athens raised a boy at home and trained the citizen later. Back in Rome, the discipline waiting inside the schoolroom looked nothing like a rattle. A Roman boy's pedagogus walked him to school. His teacher, the grammaticus, greeted him with a rod, a standard classroom tool. The orator Quintilian, teaching in Rome in the 70s and 90s CE, argued against this. Flogging, he wrote, suits slaves, not future citizens, and teaches a child to shrink from and loathe the light of day. Few people listened. 3 centuries later, in the 360s CE, Augustine remembered being beaten at school for disliking grammar, while the adults around him laughed at his tears. The line barely breaks after that. Tudor England in the 1500s caned boys with birch rods on bare skin. In 1762, Jean-Jacques Rousseau published Emile, arguing a child should grow according to its own nature instead of being broken into shape. Educated readers loved the idea. School practice barely moved. In 1844, the American reformer Horace Mann made one of the first public calls to end school flogging, arguing it could make a student stop misbehaving, but never made him want to do right. New Jersey became the first U.S. state to ban it in 1867. Massachusetts became the last in 1971, more than a century later. Victorian England, meanwhile, made education compulsory in 1870 and kept the cane and the tawse in classrooms anyway. Britain founded a National Society Against Cruelty to Children only in 1884. As of 2024, corporal punishment in schools is still legal in 62 countries. Almost 2,000 years separate the Grammaticus's rod from a 1971 Massachusetts classroom. The method barely changed. What changed was whether society called it normal. We assume childhood is universal, a fixed stage every human passes through the same way. Each civilization answered a different question. What is a child? Rome delayed the answer 9 days. Sparta tested it at birth and again at 7. Athens indulged it with toys before handing it a sword at 18. The idea that a small person deserves protection simply for being small is 2 or 3 centuries old. Even now, it isn't universal.